He is universally known as Triple Brownlow medalist Bob Skilton, as if he were christened that way. He is one of just 4 men to win the game's highest individual award 3 times. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks very much.
3 Brownlows, 9 best and fairest at South Melbourne, 1 final. Now, you can take it 2 ways, can't you? You can cherish the 1 final you had, or you can lament what might have been.
Well, I think that's probably why I'm even, prouder of what the club does now. It's if we hadn't gone to Sydney, I think we'd have folded. People have often said, "Why did I support Sydney?" And that was the case. If we'd folded, I didn't have a club at all. I'd rather say it was my club before they moved to Sydney than I haven't got a club at all. I give Richard Collis the credit for us now being respected, and that's it's nice to have a club that's respected. We never were in my day.
Let's fast forward from there to 2012 and the Swans win a flag, and you present the Premiership Cup. Where does that moment sit in your footy history?
On the wall at home, and it's from a sporting point of view, it's my proudest moment in life. It's a team game. And to think that, I was presenting the cup, for the Premiership.
Does that bring back memories for you?
Very much so, yeah. It's, that is, an absolutely great shot, I reckon.
It must be hard to distinguish. You said about the team game, and it is. No one's got more individual awards than you, but this is the one about what it's all about, isn't it? Playing with your mates and achieving something as a group.
Oh, yeah. And that was like 1970 was just so great, that Norm Smith came along and just, got a little bit extra out of us, and, we couldn't maintain it because we weren't quite good enough.
1970, Bob, was your only final, first semi-final against St Kilda at the MCG, 104,000 people in. What are your memories of that? How'd you play?
Oh, yeah, average. It wasn't one of the greatest games, but it was just great to be there. And it was great to get there. And, the fact that we won enough games through the year, to be there and get that feeling of team success. When you're playing a team game, the ultimate is team success. And, I've been invited to the Premiership Cup luncheons and everything else, but I've never ever gone because I didn't make it.
Is that the sense of not belonging to something like that?
Oh, in a sense. Yeah. They're all great blacks, and but I'm just so envious of them. One of my closest friends these days is Bluey Adams, who play with Melbourne, and when they asked me to present the Premiership Cup to North Melbourne, as it turned out, going way back, I wrote in the paper that day, that I'd swap my Brownlows for a Premiership Cup, and Bluey Adams, who played in 6th, rang me up and said, "I'll swap you one." Yeah.
Norm Smith coached Melbourne to 6 flags in 10 years, goes to South Melbourne and lifts a mediocre team into the finals. I mean, was the team good enough to play finals that year, or was it the magic of Smith?
Oh, I think a little bit of both. We didn't have many injuries, and when you get on a little bit of a roll, you probably played better than you were. And that next year we had quite a few injuries and such, and we just weren't good enough to bring it up. But Smithy, he was just great at getting the best out of everybody, and such. A unique person. There was, on some occasions he just had you petrified. On other occasions he had you eating out of his hand.
But even with your exalted status in that footy club, he could still rip into you?
Oh, and how?
Did he?
Yeah.
237 games for the Swannies. Was there ever a moment in your career where you might have gone elsewhere?
Not really, because it wasn't a done thing in those days.
Not really is not no, Bobby. So was there an invitation to perhaps go to a stronger club?
No, there was an invitation to go to Sydney and play rugby league.
Really?
Yeah, but the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
So how serious was that? When was that?
Oh, I'm hopeless on years.
But early in your career, or?
Oh, no, about the middle.
Yeah? Big money?
We didn't really get down to all that, you know. Devil you know, better than devil you don't know.
But you would have, I mean, your love for Australian football would have taken precedence, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. But, you know, I like my rugby league. I'm, you know, pretty much a Melbourne Storm supporter. Yeah. And I had an invitation to go down and train with St George. And, you know...
Same colours? Red and white?
Oh, yeah. And I didn't do their ball work and such, but I did the warm-ups and everything else. And I was quite surprised at the fitness level of some of those solid little blokes and such. But I was more surprised, you know, after the training, you know, the boys said, well, come on, we go down for a drink and such. And they'd won 10 in a row at that stage.
Yeah.
And, you know, after having a few drinks and everything else and whatever, I came back to Melbourne and said, we're going about it the wrong way. If you win 10 in a row or 11 like that, you know.
One of your old mates, Bobby, talking about the amber fluid, one of your old mates said that as good as you were, you would have been even better had you not been so keen on the liquid refreshment. Is that fair?
No, I don't think so. I went 7 years of league football before I tasted alcohol, and then it was only Saturday nights and footy trips. No, I don't think that's fair. I think I probably trained harder than most.
Is that what you in your day, it was unusual for blokes to be equally proficient on both sides of their body as you were? What was the origin of that?
And that was my dad, you know, who I never ever saw Dad play.
He played at Port Melbourne?
He had, played 12 years at Port and was captain and coach and such. And we used to go over the park after he came back from the war, and he would say, "Oh, I won't kick it back unless you kick it with the other foot." And then when you start to get a little bit proficient and such, you get a bit of a buzz about being able to do it.
Yep.
And it became pretty natural.
Bobby, I've been trying to think of a contemporary player that reminds me of you, and the closest I can come is Simon Black. Left footer, not overly quick, smart, good vision, all that sort of stuff. Is that a fair comparison? A bit umbrage at the not overly quick bit, but, no, I think that is a compliment because I think Simon Black is one of my favourites. You always have a few favourites, and I just love the consistency of Simon Black and the way he went about it, week in, week out. Is there a bloke in red and white that you like to think that might resemble you? Probably runs a bit quicker than I did, but I'd like to think Kieran Jack is a little bit the same way. Amazing, isn't it? You talk Kieran Jack, the kid that grew up in a rugby league household, and now you're sort of happy to be compared with him. Oh, I just love the way he goes about it. He's been wonderful for us, and I like the look of his brother Brandon. He's coming through and. Now, you know who won't like this chat? There's a bloke called Paul Kelly who inherited number 14 from you. Don't tell me that Kieran Jack's replaced Paul Kelly. No, nobody will ever replace Paul Kelly as my favourite footballer. There he is. Now, were you involved in the decision to give him 14? How did that come about? Well, the club asked me, would I be happy? And, I said, oh, fantastic. As I said, nobody will ever replace Paul Kelly as my favourite footballer. You've played with or seen? Yeah, and I'm not saying he's the best or anything like that. He's just my favourite. Just of his attack on the footy? Yeah, and the person himself and the way he went about it. Let's go back to the start. You're 17. There's a few injuries at South Melbourne, and you're named to play in the first at 17. Would have been pretty rough in those days, wouldn't it? Oh, they say it was, but you don't even think about those things, and until you cop a few, and then once you're out there, you realise that if you don't want to cop them, don't get the footy. They don't whack anybody who hasn't got the footy. That's true. But you used to get it a bit, so you got whacked a bit. Yeah, well, it's part and parcel. Was it brutal? I can remember watching the footy then, and I think it was brutal, but you played it. Was it sort of excessively hard and tough?
Oh, you know, I think it's just as hard and just as tough now. The pace they go at and everything else, when they hit, they hit. I admire the players just as much now as I did the players then. You know, they've got just as much courage. They're harder at it in many respects in some ways. But the game is different. It has changed.
It's changed a bit. You used to look like you had a dartboard over your face. I mean, there was a lot of blokes took pot shots at it. And how many times was that handsome nose broken, Bobby?
Oh, I don't count them.
Double figures?
You know, oh yeah, you know, yeah, Jack Refshawgy, you know, he wouldn't operate until I promised him I wasn't going to play another game.
Probably the most famous incident that you were involved in was when Eric Guy, the St Kilda halfback, ploughed through you at one point and put you to sleep for the best part of a half an hour. Do you remember the hit?
No, I don't remember a thing about it. And, you know, Eric, until he died, was a close mate. You know, he was playing for St Kilda. I was playing for South, and, you know, if Bordy had done the same thing to Ian Stewart or Darryl Baldock, you know, so be it.
You were over the footy, weren't you? And he just ploughed through.
Look, I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't remember a thing about it. You know, I just know I was out unconscious for quite a while, and they were starting to get worried, and you know, and apparently called an ambulance and so on.
You mightn't even remember this. I was in the Hawthorn President's room after a game up at Princes Park. Ron Cook was the president. You were working for Channel 7. You came in after the game and delegate Des Dixon spoke to you, and my view at the time was that you still hadn't forgiven him for treatment that he'd meted out to you on the football field.
No, he hadn't handed it out to me. You know, it had been to teammates of mine, and I just didn't like the way he went about his football.
So you didn't look like you'd forgiven him?
No, you don't play footy that way. I don't like snipers.
Okay. So Eric Guy's not a sniper because that's...
that was hard and tough, and he was straight at the footy. You know, if you're in the way, bad luck.
After the break, your old mate EJ. Bobby, you've played 2 games of VFL football, and the legendary sports journalist Jack Cannon writes in the Argus that this kid could win 3 Brownlow medals. Amazing, wasn't it? That that is a big, bold prediction.
I thought he was stupid.
Well, you're entitled to. You're 17 and you've played 2 games of footy.
Yeah, it's you know, like people say things at times and everything, but you know, it rarely comes out that way. And yeah, you know, I didn't even keep the copy of the.
We can get that for you. The first Brownlow's 59. You're an apprentice plumber. You're coming home from trade school, was it?
Yeah.
Pick up the story from there.
Oh, you know, I caught the train home, and it's you know, I was walking down the street, and in those days it was only on the radio and such, and I walked around into, you know, Griffin Crescent where I lived in Port Melbourne, and all of a sudden people started to congratulate me. And,
so you in your overall, in your work gear?
Oh, it would have been a night school.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and, so I wasn't in my plumbing gear, no. And and you know, like I thought they were kidding.
So did the Brownlow have an aura about it back then?
Oh, nothing like now.
No.
But you know, it doesn't take long to realise that it really means something, because all of a sudden, you know, your house is full of people, and there's, you know, more knocking on the door, and
reporters.
Oh yeah,
photographers.
Yeah. And so. You start to realise, hey, you know, this is pretty good.
As smart as Rovers are and as brave as they are, the first blokes to be in the contest are the ruckman. I've always been interested in your view about who was the better player out of John Nichols and Polly Farmer. You played with Nick in so many state games, and you saw Farmer up close. Is there a gap between them?
Look, when you get into that standard, you know, they're different. Nick suited me. You know, for me, Nick was the best. Polly's never forgiven me for saying it, but you know, you know, like I wouldn't mind it, you know, if I'd had to put up with raving at Polly all the time either. Yeah, and in fact, people used to say, you know, why do you love playing for Victoria? Well, my ruckman in one game for Victoria were Nichols, Farmer, Schultz. And and I don't think most people realise just how good Schultz was. He doesn't get the kudos because of Nichols Farmer.
And because he played with a bloke called Ted Whitten. Is Whitten still the best player that you've seen?
Yeah. Probably because he was my close mate and, and everything else. Right from the moment I got a game for Victoria, we were mates and, on and off the field.
Day, Bobby?
And, yeah.
I don't want to make you emotional, mate, but you had vivid memories of that day, Teddy going around the MCG with his son.
I did get very emotional standing there with Ted's brother Don. I was a selector for Victoria, and before the game, and I started crying, and so I thought, I won't stay out here watching this. I'll go downstairs, and I got downstairs, and the players were warming up, and I got tears running down. I thought, I'm better off back upstairs. So I went back upstairs, and Neil Curley, who's was always a great mate of Whitten's and my own, and still is a great bloke. And Curl came out onto the ground and stopped the car, just to say good luck and everything else. And he went back in, and I think Graham Corns was the coach, and Curls went back in and said, "Forget whatever you're going to say." He said, "We can't win."
Really? Yeah. Not long after the great EJ dies, you speak at his funeral at St Patrick's Cathedral. How difficult a day was that for you?
I think it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. That morning, living near the Moorabbin ground where St Kilda played, I walked my dogs around the oval and, going through what I was going to say, and I broke down 3 times. I got back home and I said to my wife, Marion, I said, I can't do it. And she said, you'll make it.
EJ was 61 or 2, wasn't he? The invincible EJ, and then he's gone.
Yeah. And just a wonderful person, and thankfully I'm just as close to young Ted these days.
EJ belted you though, didn't he?
Oh yeah, and you had no friends once you're out there.
Yeah. Now that the hits that you got and the famous black eyes, I want you to look up at the monitor, Bobby, and see if you recognise this bloke.
Yeah, they weren't bad. I went into the last game at Collingwood with 2 black eyes because I had my nose broken against Footscray the week before, and then just before half time, I was about to mark the kick-off from the Collingwood fullback, and John Rantel was also going to mark it, and we collided heads and both went down, and the Collingwood stand started to count us out, and I had stitches over my eyes at half time, and went out after half time, and the late Len Thompson, who was always been a close mate of mine, someone I just loved terrific. I ran into a Len Thompson shepherd, and he opened up the other eye.
You're there with Marion. How long have you been married to Marion? You better get this right, mate.
I think it's 54 years.
54 years. Post-football, there's been a few hurdles in your life.
It's not quite 54. I think it's 54 next week.
Marion had a bout of cancer at one point, and last year, the trauma with your hip problems, that weighed heavily on her, didn't it?
Look, she's in remission from the cancer, and thankfully, but once it's there, there's always a worry and such, and then. Last year with my own illness, she was just fantastic, and everybody was fantastic.
Talk us through 2013. Let's go back to March 2013. You go into hospital for what you thought was a routine hip replacement, correct?
Yep.
What happened from there?
I thought I was going to be there for a week, and so I didn't have to organise things at home or anything like that. I was going to be okay. 5.5 months later, I was still there, and they decided to take all the replacement hips that they'd gone through with washouts and such, to take them out and put in what they call a spacer, which is a bit of nothing, but the bugs don't like that.
Yeah. So you had an infection. An infection developed after you had your first hip replacement.
Yeah, apparently 3 bugs that had got in there.
How many times did they operate on your hip?
I think I had 3 washouts, and so it was, that was, sort of 4 times.
Yeah.
and then I was, pretty crook after the last one. And then they said, look, next operation, we go to St Vincent's because there's no ICU here. And, but, let me say that, everybody, the nurses, the doctors at both the Vimy House and St Vincent's were just absolutely fantastic. And the general public,
We love you, mate. People care about their legends.
And the people were just fantastic. A lot of the people I've never met, guys I'd gone to school with, came and visited me and hadn't seen them for years and years and years. Everybody was just fantastic. And, you said about, Marion, she and her girlfriends who, in and out. Marion lost 10 kilograms, hasn't put a thing back on.
You lost a lot of weight, didn't you?
Yeah, I lost a little bit more than that.
Yeah, but like how much?
I lost 12 kilograms, and I put it all back on.
How seriously ill were you at the worst of your time in hospital last year?
Oh, I don't really remember that, but, I wasn't well.
Bobby, we all know that illness and cancer and death are part of life for us. You lost one of your three boys at 19, Darren. I mean, you don't speak about it. I've never heard you talk about it. That must have been an unbelievable blow to you.
Yeah, it's not a time that, that I look back, really, I didn't handle it well. Marion had the strength of the family, not me. I blame football because Caulfield had just made the grand final.
And Darren was playing for Caulfield?
He was playing for Caulfield, in the VFA. And,
was Michael there then?
Michael's our youngest, and such. Brett also played at Caulfield. Mike played at Oakley because he didn't want to go to Caulfield. But it changed their lives. It changed all our lives. And once again, it was Marion who had the strength. And as I said, it's not something I'm proud of, but these things happen in life. Unfortunately. That was the way it went. Accidents do happen, and
was it a car accident?
Yeah.
You said you were. I understood you to say that you were dirty on football. Did you say that? Yeah.
Well, I blame football. They were celebrating and to make the grand final and such, but that was stupid. You do stupid things at stupid times, and
not stupid times. I mean, I can't imagine it, but they're just times that probably test us to a point we've never been at before. Yeah,
but look, once again, it was Marion, as I said, who had the strength, and it's been great.
I want to ask you about coaching. You had 2 years as playing coach of South Melbourne. Was that a good idea?
It was probably a great experience, but it's very hard to play and coach, particularly the way, I felt about playing and such.
Almost inevitably, we would have thought Bob Skilton would have coached South Melbourne after he retired as a player, and it never happened.
I'd had a disagreement with the committee at South at the time, and
over?
And a couple in particular. Those things don't matter.
Well, they do matter because you didn't coach the footy club that you spent 16 years playing for.
Yeah, but I had coached them and such. That as much as I love the club, if you're not talking to the people who run the club, then you're not likely to be coach.
No,
and I wanted to coach, so I took on the job at Melbourne, and Melbourne had lost the last 10 games straight the year before, and then we proceeded to lose the first 9 games straight in my first year, and I agree with everybody else. I had been stupid, but
what do you mean? Do you mean that literally or not?
Oh, no, facetiously, because when the club's lost 19 consecutive games, things aren't exactly rosy.
Yeah.
But whatever. But a couple of years later, I do have a trophy at home that said Herald Sun Coach of the Year.
Your mates that you played with, Whitten, Murray, Nichols, all those guys, they called you Chimp. Were you ever offended by the tag chimp?
No, I wasn't, but my mother was. And, and
Did she seriously take offence at that?
Oh yeah, she didn't like it, but look, you win a nickname sometimes, and you wear it, particularly with your mates, and the more you say, don't call me that, the more they're going to.
Exactly. You probably sent HBA broke at the time, but was it all worth it? All the things that have had, we've seen that famous illustration in The Sun of the time of all the injuries that you'd suffered. So looking back, all worth it?
Oh yeah. I think I'm going along all right. And whatever. I've got a few aches and pains, but hasn't everybody?
What's your proudest single moment, Bobby, in your footy life?
In my footy life,
Yep.
being that shot that you showed me earlier of the players up on the rostrum.
I understand that, but you didn't do anything that day other than pass the cup over. And I know there's the emotional link to the footy club, but you're in a sense of your own achievement.
No, that meant more to me.
Okay.
To be able to present that cup. And I remember when I was standing out in the ground holding it, standing there on my own, and I kept thinking to myself, I'll wave this to the crowd. My team has just won, and my club has just proven, to go 72 years, literally with nothing, and we didn't have respect and such, and then when we beat Hawthorn, I stood there representing, my club or our club, and we have earned respect, and that's just great. And I love my club, and it's been great.
You're a legend. I don't know what we say about a bloke who's won 3 Brownlows and 9 club best and fairest. You're a legend. Everyone loves you. It's been a privilege to have you on, Bobby. Well done.
Thanks very much, Mike. It's been great. I love my footy.
I know.
Next Monday on Open Mic, his dramatic fall from grace became headlines across Australia.
Sex, lies and videotapes. Ricky's shame. We didn't have sex. The Nixon scandal. Drugs probe. Give him the boot. Were you addicted?
It's a good question.
Ricky Nixon.
No one's ever asked me what happened to me.
His side of the story.
I'll tell you something else about that hotel room, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet.
Open Mic, next Monday, Fox Footy. This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.